It was a tense time politically. Race relations were in an ugly place in America. It was a recipe for Denver's first race riot. Colorado's new state historian, Dr. William Way, shares the story of the brutal attack that happened on this day in 1880.
At that time, Chinatown was essentially a working class community. And what we have there today is Lodo, the lower downtown district. The riot has to also be understood in a political context, of course referring to the presidential election of 1880 between James Garfield and Winfield Hancock. Hancock accused Garfield of the importation of cheap Chinese labor. At 2 p.m. in the afternoon, some drunken folks entered a saloon on Wazee Street. One of the drunken individuals struck one of the Chinese, initiating the riot. It attracted 3,000 to 5,000 Denverites to descend upon Chinatown, the Chinese community. In the course of it, they of course hurt a lot of folks and killed one individual. It's surprising that only one person was killed, but I have to say, it wasn't from want of trying. Well, in this particular instance, I think hindsight really is foresight, to view immigration as objectively as possible, rather than to be influenced by a lot of the political rhetoric that surrounds them.
Denver was not alone. There were more than 200 similar anti-Chinese incidents across the American West at that time. The U.S. government soon passed the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1882, banning the immigration of Chinese laborers. That was a stain on American history that was not fully addressed until 1965 and not apologized for by Congress until 2011.